when Mom had her fall almost 2 weeks ago, right before that we had started working on her balance because she was doing things that led me to believe that she had a fear of falling. So we had started working on some balance exercises and some strengthening, but then she had the fall. And so now her fear of falling is huge. Fear of falling is kind of an interesting thing because it doesn't always happen when someone falls. A lot of times it happens without any, what looks to us like any reason for it happening. So the person didn't have a fall. They all of a sudden, though, have an internal fear that they're going to fall. And so that's what we're going to talk about in today's video. And at the end of the video, I'll show you a demonstration of what fear of falling might look like, what you might see in your parent as evidence that they might have a fear of falling. And then if they do, having a physical therapist is a really good idea. I'm Tammy Provenzel. I'm a physical therapist and a life coach for caregivers. I make videos like this because I know as a caregiver myself and as a physical therapist that we don't have the resources we need, especially if you don't have a medical background, to advocate, to do the best thing that we can for our parents as caregivers. So I make these videos hopefully to help other caregivers. A lot of times when we think about a fall, we think about there's a physical issue or there's a range of motion issue, and a lot of times that is part of the problem. But what happens specifically when someone develops a fear of falling is that sometimes it's a neurological thing, sometimes it's a psychological thing, and sometimes it's the physical stuff. So in order to help somebody who has a fear of falling, we kind of have to figure that out. And to put interventions in place, we have to figure out which ones this specific person might be having at the time. It's a complex thing where our body relies on multiple systems working together to prevent us from falling. And those things include things like balance, muscle strength, range of motion, coordination, cognitive processing, which is how fast our brain can process information we're getting and form a response to that, and our visual input. So a fall happens when one of those systems or a combination of those systems fail and gravity takes over. So that fear is kind of rooted in our brain's strong desire to protect us. So the natural instinct that our brain has to try to protect us is the reason that it instills this fear. But that fear itself can backfire because it reduces our physical activity. And so you might hear your parents saying something like, I'm too tired to go out, or I don't really like going out to eat anymore. So when we think about fear, fear is an emotion, but like many emotions, it has a physiological and a psychological component to it. The more afraid someone is of moving, the less they're going to move. And the less they move, the less they keep up their strength and their balance and their range of motion, and the more likely they are to fall. Let's talk about balance for a minute. So balance is multidimensional. It's not a single thing. It relies on multiple systems in our body. So there's the inner ear that has a huge impact on our balance. In my mom's case, she had a neurological issue about 5 years ago that impacted her inner ear. So that already puts her at a higher risk of falling. The second system involved in balance is our proprioception, and that's our awareness of where our body is in space. When you look at the end of this video with Mom as an example, you'll probably be able to see that as I try to get her to shift her weight forward, she's resisting it because in her brain and her mind, potentially, it's telling her that she's going to fall on her face. So everything in her is trying to stop her from bringing her weight forward. And then the third big system involved in balance is our visual system. And that's one of the reasons why having good lighting is always one of the recommendations that therapists make for patient safety. Historically, when people talk about preventing falls or lessening the risk of falls, physical therapists and other trainers will mostly focus on the body. So they'll do things like strengthening muscles, range of motion, work on coordination, work on balance. But there's a lot of newer science that talks about processing speed. As we get older, our speed of processing, so we see something, our brain understands what it saw and then it reacts to it, slows down. So for example, if we're walking and we see a curb, our brain takes that information, it says, oh, you got to lift your foot. And as we get older, that response time slows down. And as that response time slows down, that of course increases our risk of falling because we can't react in real time to a threat that's going to throw our balance off. And then there's something called midline confusion, and that's what I was talking about earlier. What I see in a lot of patients with fear of falling is the tendency to fall backwards, because when they're standing fully upright in a neutral position, not too far forward, not too far back, they feel like they're falling forward. So then they have a tendency to want to lean back, and that's where a lot of falls, the majority of falls that I've seen, are backwards. So if we think about what we should do if someone has a fear of falling, we have to figure out the cause of it. So like in Mom's case, she does have an inner ear issue. There's some training that can be done. She's had a lot of physical therapy for that. It might be that she ends up not being able to get much better than she is, and she might have to deal with that for the rest of her life. And so that might mean that we're going to put into place things like a walker, like really strengthening her legs and her core, and then speed of processing training. The most important thing is to figure out the cause, not just look at the symptoms. We use the symptoms to try to figure out what the cause is. So if it looks like strength or range of motion is limited, then focusing on those areas, strengthening and increasing range of motion, are important. If it seems like there's a psychological component where your parent looks like they're shrinking their world, where they're limiting what they do, if they're aware of it, you can actually talk to them about it. So you can say, it seems like you might be afraid that you're going to fall. Mom is very able to tell me that she feels like she's going to fall. She's afraid she's going to fall. It's a scary feeling, and just being able to talk about it can be really helpful. And then there's actually some really good techniques to work on the speed of processing. So as those things get slowed down as we get older, there are some really good exercises that can help to improve it at whatever level we are. So if it looks like your parent is demonstrating that they have a fear of falling, think about safety first. So look at the environment. Are there ways that you can limit the chances of falling, or at least the chances of getting hurt if there is a fall? Then you're going to rebuild the system. So if there's strength or balance or range of motion issues, hopefully have a physical therapist who can help you work on that. And then, like in the video I'm about to show you with Mom, you're going to challenge the system. So as I do balance exercises with her, I'm challenging her system. I'm getting her to do scary things for two reasons. First of all, I want to retrain her brain that when she's standing totally upright, or even if she's shifting her weight a little bit forward, she's not going to face plant. So she's got to override that fear that's in her brain. And then psychologically too, it's going to help her to regain some of her confidence. So if we think about it, we don't really want to eliminate somebody's fear of falling. We want to make it manageable. We want them to be safe. We want them to acknowledge that things are dangerous, or this uneven ground is dangerous, and so that they take actions to limit their risk that they're going to fall. So here's a video of Mom and I. See if you can notice that as I try to get her to shift her weight forward, everything in her is resisting me. She's got a lot of fear, and we're going to keep working on that, and I'll maybe be able to show a video in the future where that's getting better. As I'm standing in front of Mom, and I'm going to have her start to shift her weight toward me. Mom has a tendency to fall backwards now. She's resistant to coming forward. She feels like when I do this that she's going to fall on her face. So that's an example of something you might see. So as I'm trying to bring her forward, she's really fighting me to stay back. So what you might see is your parent falling backwards. Some of the symptoms that you might see in your parent are, like you'll see in this video with Mom, is the tendency to fall backwards. You might notice that they fall backwards as soon as they go to stand up. They just fall back in their chair. You might notice that they're always reaching for something to hold on to. If every once in a while your parent reaches for something, but if you notice them always looking around for something to grab onto, that's an indication that they're afraid of falling. And then you might also notice that they take really small steps, that they're really hesitant when they're walking. So as you watch this video, you can actually tell that Mom improves a little bit, even with just this little bit of practice. One of the best things to do in a situation like this is to have a physical therapist come in and do an assessment and work on retraining the brain and the body. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share with anybody you think might find value in this video.